Hi guys, is Talk TV, the place where journalism goes to die? Because Julie Hartley-Brewer, the host, refused to push back against her guest, a guy called Sam Armstrong, who's a right-wing commentator. Now, when it comes to asylum seekers, those on the right have been constantly complaining about accommodating them. So when they were put in ex-hotels, they refused to call them ex-hotels and describe them as 3, 4, and 5-star hotels, even though that was not true. When they were moved out of those hotels, they were moved into rented accommodation, and the right were still complaining about that. Now it seems if they're being moved into ex-army bases, well, they're still complaining. Have a listen.
But the story that makes me most sick today is this Crowborough migrant camp. 500 fighting age... 600 fighting age men.
What's 100?
Okay, why do they keep referring to them as fighting age young men? Fighting age. You know, some people who are claiming asylum are fleeing war. Some are not fleeing war, they're fleeing persecution. But this idea that you keep focusing on fighting age young men, of course, it's about painting an image of these people should be staying at home and fighting. But what if it's not a war that they're in? What if it's that they're gay or they're from a religious minority and they're being persecuted? What are they supposed to do? Stand and fight the government and be killed?
What's 100 illegal migrants between friends, Sam?
But here's what really...
And of course, they're not illegal migrants, they're asylum seekers. Once again, where is the journalism?
really cheeses me off. This was a military camp. Once upon a time, that camp was for military fighting age men from this country
defending
who
us,
volunteered to defend these shores. Today, it is being given over, handed over to fighting age men who have invaded this country.
Is it like some sort of sacred ground? It was once hosting soldiers. Now it's been given over to asylum, as if it's some sort of sacred territory. You know, is it an ancient Indian burial ground like some sort of Stephen King novel? Like if you put asylum seekers in there, the ghosts are going to come back and seek revenge. It's as if he's describing some sort of sacred ground that people cannot be put on unless they have some sort of affinity to some ideology or something. This is beyond ridiculous.
Like, I don't apologise for using the word invaded. They are coming over en masse, breaking the laws in the thousands.
What laws have they broken? I keep asking this question. We keep hearing how asylum seekers are breaking into the country or breaking the law. What laws have they broken? It's not it's not illegal to enter the country to claim asylum. Now, if you're talking about people who have overstayed their visa or have not respected the conditions of their visa, that's a different story. But nobody has committed once again, if somebody has committed a crime, why have they not been arrested?
Organised gangs, organised criminals. Some of them have gone on to become terrorists. Yeah. Many of them go straight on to watch lists. We have seen the most appalling sexual violence cases. We've seen appalling theft, appalling illegal work.
Appalling illegal work. Okay. This guy is desperate. It's just like, you know, people are committing crimes, and some of them have committed crimes. And if they have committed crimes, they should go to prison. They should suffer the consequences of breaking the law. But horrible work offences.
Absolutely everything about this scandal represents an invasion. And today, rather than defend our borders, we are turning over precious military bases.
They're not being used. How are they precious? They're no longer in use. In many cases, they're not in use because they're not fit for purpose. They're crumbling. They're no longer fit for purpose. So the government is deciding, okay, we have all this empty space around. We have this empty accommodation. Let's try and rebuild it some way to provide housing for asylum seekers. I'm not saying that this is the correct approach, but this is what the government is doing. But to suggest that this is some sort of sacred ground or this is fit for purpose for the military, it's not. Otherwise, they would be using it.
To house the very people who have invaded this country, and we're doing it all at our expense.
Yeah, it's absolutely obscene. And again, I think
What is the alternative? What is the alternative for these people? They just keep complaining. They don't actually provide a solution. Well, unless the solution is we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. That will stop the boats. That will stop the immigration. Of course, it won't. And of course, people like this will never be challenged on that. But you notice that these people never actually have a solution. All they do is complain.
Some of us go, okay, if on a temporary basis while these things are assessed, and it doesn't take a year, a couple of weeks, sorry, a month.
You have no understanding of the asylum system, and you're just putting out claims like, yeah, it just takes a couple of weeks to process a claim. It doesn't. There's an appeals process. There's a whole backlog. There's about 100,000 backlog to be processed. And why is there 100,000 backlog? Because her friends, the Tories, refuse to process claims.
At best, they're going to be held, but behind bars, unable to be walking freely, then I think some of us would accept it. But, we know perfectly well the reason why they're all free on the street.
You want asylum seekers to be put in prison, to be put behind bars.
Streets is because they couldn't hold them in detention centres because of human rights laws. Now, there's a plan also to go through fast-track deportation, so limiting the number of appeals. Again, that'll be challenged on the European Court of Human Rights. Permanent, this was announced over the weekend, permanent settlement only granted after 20 years, not 5. Your refugee status is only temporary, basically reviewed every 2.5 years. And then, of course, you had the bleeding hearters out going, but then people can't make a life for themselves. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, but
Good. People cannot make a life for themselves. So people who have arrived, followed the rules, put in an asylum claim, had it processed, were successful in their claim, who have done everything that were expected of them, and now you're turning around and say, well, we want to deport these people anyway. We want to send them back. When it comes to countries like Syria, the situation in Syria has improved, but we don't know what the current situation will, or what the situation will be in the future. So you could potentially be sending people back to a country that's temporarily safe, but may not be safe in the future. And also, of course, what happens to the families? If you decide we're going to send a guy back to Syria who has a family in Britain, what happens to his family? Do they have to be deported as well? What if some of the children were born in Britain? Do they get deported as well? You're going to break up families?
that's the whole point. But you only hear, and I genuinely heard a BBC interviewer say today, so you're basically saying they can't make a life here for themselves because at any point they could be sent home. And you think, there's a key word there, isn't it? Home. Yeah, to their home. So if they've left their home because it was not safe, but now their home is safe, then...
How did you determine that it was safe? Because you'd have to look at every individual case. In some cases, it's safe to go back. In other cases, it's not. But you can't say the country is now safe for everyone to return. Once again, you'd have to go through it on a case-by-case basis.
And you go home. That's like someone coming to stay with you because their home has been flooded and they move into your home and they're staying with you and then their home is mended and they go, well, actually, quite like it here. I think I'll stay here. No, your home's fine. You can go back to it now.
But what if they brought their family? See, this is the problem. If they either brought their family or they had raised family in the country. Like this analogy with, well, your house was flooded and now you go back, is a bit ridiculous because we're talking about people who are fleeing persecution. You'd need to determine whether the house was actually mended, whether it was safe for them to return. Because what's the point in them returning to the house and then the house being flooded the following year? Wouldn't you want to make sure that the house was safe and it was safe in the long term? Maybe they didn't leave. Maybe they used the excuse of the house being flooded and in reality they were being abused by their partner or their family in that house. And that's why they don't want to go back. While the flooding has been resolved, there are other issues. These people are not journalists. They pretend to be journalists. They don't act like journalists. Journalists are supposed to ask difficult questions. They're supposed to challenge commentators or guests. But instead, all you see on Talk TV or Reform TV, as I like to describe it, is just agreeing with these people. Sadly, it seems the government want to emulate Nigel Farage and Reform, want to out-Farage with these types of policies, under the impression that they will convince people to vote for the government at the next election. But why would somebody who hates asylum seekers vote for Farage Light if they can get the full-fat version with Reform? Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.